so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hi, everyone. This is Lori LeBay with Alzheimer's Speaks, and welcome to the radio show today. Before we get started with our guest, I always like to give people a little introduction to who we are and why we're here. And bottom line, my mom lived with dementia for 30 years, and for me, that was life-changing, and I just felt a need to connect people and to hear everybody's voice, from those living with dementia to those caring for them, researchers, you name it, advocates. It doesn't really make any difference. We need to share our experience in our stories. And so that's what we're doing here. We're going to hang out and have a great conversation. And we believe that by kind of joining forces and just having these everyday conversations that we're going to be able to shift how people view dementia and hopefully get rid of a lot of the stigmas that are attached to memory loss and help people really continue to live with purpose. And together, I think, is really the best way to do that. At our core, we believe that collaboratively is really the only way we're going to get rid of this disease and win this battle. And so I want to thank you for your likes, your shares, your clicks with not only our radio program, but our resource directory, our blog, our YouTube channel, our website. Because of you, we were named the #1 influencer online for Alzheimer's by ShareCare and Dr. Oz, and we by no means did that alone. That was because of you believing in the material that we push out and the content. And I want you to understand the power that you have as an individual to help share information and knowledge, because all of us have a sphere of influence, and many people we know, but especially with social media, there's a lot of people we're connected to that we're really not connected to, and we don't really know their stories. And the more information we can push out regarding dementia and caregiving, the easier it's going to be for somebody to grab a hold of it when the time is right for them. Like anything else, you can't force somebody to grab a hold of knowledge. And so again, I just really want to thank all of our listeners for being such great advocates for us here at Alzheimer's Speaks. I also want to mention that, maybe you could be our next guest. We're always looking to talk to people, to hear their stories, their ideas, their thoughts, their life experiences. So, go to alzheimersspeaks.com and just click on the contact button, shoot me an email. I would love to hear what your thoughts are, and see if we can do a show and include you in our archives so that more and more people will will be able to have their voices raised. I also want to give a shout out to the Call Alert Center, which I just think so highly of. It's a very inexpensive way if you have a person that you are caring for and you're worried about wandering. And we never know if someone's going to wander or not until it's too late. But for, under $15 a year, you can have, you can set up basically an account that is ready and able to go and will work with the police department and get out to social media in case you have that need. And I know for myself, I can say it just allows me to sleep a little bit better. They have it not only for people caring for somebody, but for pets, for children, for college students, for travelers abroad, and it's really just kind of a fascinating technology that's really at our fingertips. The other one I want to mention is, because I get questions about the memory cafes all the time, if you go to Alzheimer's Speaks and go to our projects and initiatives page, and then just scroll down to the Memory and Alzheimer's Cafes, you'll be able to read a little bit more about that. There's some tools that will help you. But most importantly, there is a resource directory that is provided by Calendar Cards. And I have found it to be the most thorough and easy to use directory. So I would recommend clicking on that one versus going to my resource directory, even on Alzheimer's Speaks. So again, our goal is to make life easier for you. So with that, let me introduce our guest today. Very excited to have him. I met this man a couple of years ago and have been trying to get him on the show since then, but he's a little busy. And so I'm just thrilled to have him in the studio with us today. His name is Joel Theisen, and he is a RN, and he's the founder and CEO of Lifesprk. And he has been building a proven whole person model for senior care for more than 12 years, and it's changing how the aging experience is felt and dealt with. Joel is a business innovator, and he's earned numerous accolades from the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He was also the finalist for the Upper Midwest in 2011 and a finalist for the Minnesota Leaders in Healthcare Award in 2015. Under his guidance, Lifesprk has been one of the fastest growing companies in the Twin Cities since its founding and has won a ton of awards for its culture, including repeated Star Tribune top 150 workplaces in the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal of, best places to work. So, like I said, just thrilled to have you with us, Joel. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Lori.
Well, first of all, I want you to, this is a question I always throw out to everybody, because our listeners always kind of like this as a base. Have you been personally touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends?
I sure have, and actually not only touched, but touched lots of times. So actually right now, my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's, and she was early onset at 66, so very early in her life. She was very well, actually. And so my wife and I, my wife's also a nurse, have been on that journey with her and her husband, as well as all of our family for quite some time now. Now it's going on 12 years. She's on hospice, and so it's been a very good experience for me to not only be a professional in the field and being touched by it every day, but also very, very personally. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience. My mom also started out very young in her mid-50s, and just totally life-changing. And it really makes you look, I guess you can look at the disease two ways. You can look at it as a gift and how to engage better, or you can look at it as a disaster and take a hike and say, I'm out of here.
That's right. That's right.
And I'm sure in your business you see families do both.
Absolutely. I mean, we have about 700 clients right now, and probably I would say a quarter of them are afflicted with some sort of cognitive impairment. And so you do see all sorts of different experiences and different ways that people deal with that, as you can imagine, and I'm sure you know that. So our job is really to do a lot of the things that you talk about and that you write about and you speak about, which is to help be an advocate, to provide guidance and resources and knowledge to take away some of that fear and give people sometimes a different language, if you will, almost to work with the loved ones that mean so much to them.
Very, very much so. Now, you have more than 20 years of experience in the senior care industry as a whole. Can you share with us why you developed Lifesprk and what the heck does it do?
Well, answer the latter first. It sparked lives. But for me, why I got into this space, if you will, is that, being a nurse, I worked at the Mayo Clinic for a couple of years in cardiovascular transplant intensive care, and found that working in a very medical-minded symptomology sort of approach wasn't really my calling. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I learned that early. And then I spent about 7 or 8 years working in the home health industry nationally all over the country. So I had a chance to really see people in their homes, in different environments, mostly in the homes. And what really started to resonate with me as I had some experience and gained knowledge in the industry was the fact that it's so broken. It just does not really serve people. And so I started to get this inner swell go on that said, this is really broken and we got to do something different. Mm-hmm. And one of the main parts in that difference was we're so much about the medicalization of healthcare. It's so much about treating symptoms and fixing things. And what I was really not okay with was we weren't really looking at a lot of the psychosocial aspects of someone's life. And even though in home health and in different service models that we have in healthcare, which, by the way, I kind of call sick care because it's mostly sick care and not really health care.
Yep.
It is that we just, we want to just make that quick fix, and we send people back into maybe an unsupportive environment or not a fully supportive environment, and they fail again, and then they fail again. And by the time they fail 3 or 4 times, it's really hard to pick them back up and get them back on a good path of wellness.
Yep.
And so for me, the reason why is it was very broken. It's still very broken, and I'm not okay with it, and my team's not okay with it. And we want to really serve people long term on their goals and wishes, not on a medicalization kind of model.
Yep. And that's a huge flip. To me, that's one of the things that I guess got me to switch careers too. Was, there's got to be another way. There's got to be, I get that we need a cure. I get that we need to raise funds. I get that we have to, gather Congress, get them pushed behind this. But what about the people right now?
That's right.
What do we do? How do we do that? And there's been just such amazing things that that are occurring all around the world. And these social engagement pieces that you're talking about, people are willingly sharing them, all over.
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of the dollar versus prescriptions is so much less. I just kind of ram my head into the wall and go, what's the problem here? Why aren't people seeing this? Do you have those moments too?
Yeah, one of my favorite mentors, you probably know him, Richard Leiter.
Mm-hmm.
He always says, common sense isn't that common.
Yeah.
so it seems so easy, but it's not, right?
Yep.
And so, we see that, and it's pretty sad. We have a lot of broken parts, including a payment system that rewards really acute reactive care, and so there's not a real focus on preventive long-term wellness,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's a big part of it. And that's why at Lifesprk, you asked me what we do is every single person that we work with, we have what we call a life care manager, not a care manager, a life care manager
Mm-hmm.
that focuses on that whole person. That looks, yes, we always have to, like you mentioned, you have to look at the medical. It's part of it.
Yep.
You can't just walk away from it. It's really important. But then we also look at, identity, finance, social supports, purpose, passion. And when you start changing that viewpoint that you mentioned, really great things happen.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us maybe a story of one of the great things that I'm sure you're filled with like a zillion of them, and I'll have you probably kind of drop and dribble those out through our conversation, because
Sure.
I think those are the things that people remember. Not that they're not listening to us out there right now, but do you have a story that just comes to mind?
Yeah, one that always comes to mind for me is a person that I actually got to care for early in the Lifesprk experience. Her name's Ruth, and Ruth basically had a situation where she was really angry, and she had some dementia, and she had some other diseases as well, and nobody wanted to work with her. Nobody wanted to be with her. She had estranged her family. She had estranged everyone. Mm-hmm. And the health system also didn't know what to do with her because she was in a transitional care unit, and they basically said, hey, look, if I know you want to go home, you're not safe, but we'll call Lifesprk, and if they can do it, if they can't do it, no one can do it. So we got a call from the niece, who was the kind of the power of attorney, and we got, Joyce. It's been a while. So Joyce home, and Joyce wanted us out of there. She had the caregiving part, and she's like, get out of here, and was yelling all the time and very angry. Mm-hmm. And over time, we had to just develop that rapport and trust with her. In doing that, we basically were able to start to have a conversation, and I was able to have a conversation with her. And, she was a smoker and a drinker, and, she had some other not so healthy behaviors. Mm-hmm. But what I broke through with was she had an ice cream store across the road from her house, and she loved sundaes. So I started bringing her sundaes. That was a way to her heart. So as I brought her sundaes, we started having dialogue and conversations. And I learned, when I first looked at Joyce, I saw her as a very frail, very kind of a hermit sort of person. Mm-hmm. What I learned, though, as I was able to discover what's important to her and who she really was she was a lady of the fine arts, and she had been on kind of the scene downtown for many years. Yeah. And I learned that was really her passion and her purpose in life. And she had actually a master's degree in fine arts. And I ran with that in the sense I've said, hey, Joyce, I know it's getting towards the later part of your life here, and she was on hospice actually at that point. And I said, what would be important to you? What would be sort of some of those things that would be most meaningful? And she shared with me that it was all about, if she could get downtown for one last performance, that would be the deal, right?
Yep.
And given that she was on oxygen, on hospice, very debilitated, she weighed about 80 pounds. She usually didn't get dressed for the day. It was a big challenge, but I said, you know what? That's all I needed. And so I was able to call the State Theater. They gave us free tickets for the Nutcracker a few years back. And I asked Joyce if she would go, and she said, okay, I'll try. So the day of the Nutcracker, I called her and I said, I'm coming over to pick you up, Joyce. And she said, oh, no, I'm having a breathing issue. I can't do it. And I was breaking my heart, but I went over anyway. And I was able to sit with her and listen. And I looked in her eyes and she looked in mine. And I said, Joyce, just let's give this a try. And she was open. And so I picked her up like a baby and I took her down into my Jeep. And away we went down to the State Theater for the show. And what was amazing was once we got down there, we got her in the wheelchair and we were wheeling up to the State Theater with all the lights, and all of a sudden she came alive. I mean, here's a woman with bad arthritis and all sorts of physical problems, and all of a sudden she was gleaming. I mean, her eyes were alive, her face was alive, and basically we got her in there. We went by the beverage station, and I said, would you like something to drink? Thinking she'd like some water, and she said, I'll have a vodka 7-Up. And against my better nursing judgment, I agreed. We got in there, and it was amazing for me to sit there and watch her with her regal nature of her participating and really enjoying this performance, which was fantastic. We got done. I was feeling great. We were on our way back to her home, and she said, okay, so now were we going to go down to Nyes? so I laughed, and we laughed, and I said, well, not tonight, Joyce, but we got her back. And when I got her back into her apartment, I was feeling pretty proud of myself. I thought this was really a really special time for her and for me. And I got down on one knee and I was just kind of getting her back into bed. And I said, Joyce, how was it? How was it for you? What do you think? And she looked at me with her kind of tough old grizzly nature. And she said, Joel, I've seen a lot better performances. So she but then she gave me her little squirrely kind of smile, and she looked at me and she gave me that twinkle and that spark, and she said, you know what, though? I've never had a better night. And that broke my heart. And so somebody like Joyce just going through that experience of seeing her become alive and seeing her in her best possible state of being was something that I'll never forget. So that was one story that's very powerful for me personally.
What a gift.
Yeah.
What a gift. And I think sometimes people don't understand the power of those little nuggets, what we get when we give, when we try. I mean, it's just, you can't even put them into words. Or I can't. Why don't we talk a little bit about why Lifesprk is called Lifesprk? And what your whole senior care model, looks like as a whole.
Okay. Well, the reason for Lifesprk is really simple. It's about sparking lives. And when we were thinking about the name and renaming the company, our first name was Age Well, right? And when we first started the company, and what we realized is nobody wanted to age anything in our society, right? And so even though people were aging well, people didn't really like that. So we wanted to be more affirming about what we really were about, is finding what puts that spirit back in your personhood, right? What puts that little twinkle in your eye. And that's why we went with Lifesprk, is because it is about the real internal goodness that we're trying to bring out in someone. And so what Lifesprk it really does is discover what's important to people at a basic sense. And then through that, we build plans that are fulfilled through using the community and using resources in the local market and creating outcomes and creating measures that we can all be accountable to make sure that we're making progress. And then over time, as we get some of the medical issues out of the way, or maybe some of the financial issues, the most rewarding and the most powerful thing that we can do is allow people to have that life experience that they feel in control and empowered, and that they're really living at their best point. And so that's been and has been and always will be the reason for Lifesprk and why we call it Lifesprk.
Wow. Well, that is. I mean, it makes sense with the whole name piece. Now, you have kind of 7 essential elements that you talk about. Can you share that with our audience?
Sure. In most care delivery models or in healthcare, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll do health real well. They'll do the fixed stuff. And so that's one element. But what we do is we look at all the rest. And I mentioned them a little bit already. We look at their environment. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be the judger of anything. We meet people where they're at. So they might live in assisted living. They might live in memory care. They might live in independent living. They may live at home. They might live in a co-op. It doesn't matter to us. So we want to know and we want to share the information and opportunities that people have around environment. Then we look at, their financial situation. We want to know what resources they have available to them. So over the long term, they can make the best plan possible. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people don't have much money or sometimes no money. And so not only do we look at the financial kind of assets of someone, but also the social supports. We have a lot of people that maybe are really great people and they've been doing, like you said, they give a lot. And so they maybe were a teacher, let's say, and they've given to a lot of people. And what we try to do is tap that resource of social supports, right? Who can we get around them to play in their world and help them fulfill some of the things that are important to them? Mm-hmm. So the social supports is important. And then we also look at their cognition, where they are in that, so we can get a baseline and manage that and measure that over time. And then the fun ones, the ones that get us really excited, which we've mentioned already, are the identity, who somebody is and who they still want to be. So we look at their religious kind of views, their political views, and we want to know that because that's until we know them, we don't know anything, right? Mm-hmm. And then the final is around purpose. What gets them up in the morning? What are they thinking about when they go to bed at night? And by looking at that purpose, that's where we think the most opportunities are with our seniors and the most joy it brings, not only to them, but to all of us around them that are able to really serve them.
Now, it's interesting because, with those things that you mentioned, do you think that has kind of a ripple effect on your staff? I mean, because those are things that we all should be focusing on, I think.
Yeah, again, common sense isn't that common, right? I think that absolutely, and that's why Lifesprk has been top employer, top 150 employer. We've grown 30% a year over the last few years, every year, and that's because people want to do this work. Because when they do this work, it is that ripple effect. They feel that joy in their hearts. I mean, most people that go into any sort of health services or social supportive services work want to give and they want to see things from the client's perspective. But because of the way the system's sort of architected and some of the payment methodologies and other struggles that we have, they've been shut out of really their own purpose and passion. So we've been able to open them back up, and they come because now they can do the work that they really always wanted to do. And we hear that all the time with the people that work at Lifesprk.
Wow. Now, do you find with your methodology that your turnover is less then because employees are more engaged and kind of at that heart and soul level? It's not just a paycheck? Absolutely. And we have that in numbers. I mean, we have national standards and we look at that very carefully. We actually have a workforce team that's working on those metrics and demonstrating that those outcomes. I'll give you one example. What we look at with our employees is somewhat similar to what we do with our clients. We have life plans for our clients, right, that focus on those 7 areas. We've also are deploying employee life plans. So what that means as an employer, we want to have the metrics that they need to drive in their role, like all companies, and their key performance indicators and all that. But also what we're asking our employees is, look, what can this company do for you around your life that's important? So maybe it's they want to run a marathon, maybe they want to do some nonprofit work, whatever that is. We need to understand that as an employer, and when we do, that just engages the relationship in a whole different way, as you can imagine. Again, not rocket science, but we do that, and I think that's been some of the art, along with the science, that's allowed us to be as successful as we have been so far. Well, that's neat. I look back and thinking of healthcare and people, I think, go into that space because they want to feel good, they want to feel purposeful, they want to feel like they did the right thing. And so many companies that I see, and tell me if you see this, don't allow that because they're too worried about failure, or what are people going to think if we do something out of the box? What are our liabilities? Which I understand to a certain point, but life is all risk.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think that's what you're saying is exactly right on. It's a couple things, right? Either the industry is pushing, productivity standards and really looking so hardcore at the business analytics that they miss the art and the beauty and what they're trying to do in the first place around really serving people at a core level, right? And then the other is, the other side of it is, again, we've mentioned this, but I think that the way that we pay for services, what we reward in our system now, if you get sick or you end up in the hospital, then there's a payment. You either have insurance or Medicare or Medicaid or something pays for it, right? And so there's a payment. So that's how it works. But if you're kind of on the fringe and you're out in your social environment, you're doing okay, but you need a little bit more support or a little bit more guidance, there's no payment for that. So we let people kind of fall down into these worst place situations that are extremely expensive, both financially and also emotionally, and from an ability for people to even focus on purpose. And I think that's some of the shift that needs to happen in our sick care systems.
Well, and I think that point of the emotional value, the mental health, we don't value that. It's not in the equation, and yet, if someone isn't emotionally healthy, and they're depressed or they're stressed, we all know. I mean, everybody knows that causes stress, which causes illness, and so we keep putting this cycle out there instead of stopping it. It's like we are a sick cycle instead of a wellness cycle.
That's right. Yep, exactly what I was trying to articulate. And the thing about it is, why is that? So I've asked that question a million times of myself. Why is that? And the thing is, if you want to really boil it down to some basics, is that, working with people's behavior and emotion and psychosocial, that's hard. There's so many variables. There's so many, it's more long-term. You can't just fix it, right? And so our culture is so driven, it's with speed around fixing things, and that's what's rewarded, that we don't want to really get into the messy kind of long-term hard stuff. And that's where I think, again, I agree with you. That's where all the opportunity is, and we continue to just reward this broken cycle.
But I also think it's my personal belief that as a society, as a nation, actually as a globe, we don't want to feel. So, if I have to feel where you're at, then that means I got to look in the mirror at what are my feelings about my life and my situation, and oh my gosh, that means I would have to do something, and people don't like change. And so it's because there's so much shame wrapped in feelings, when emotions really aren't good or bad, they just are. We gotta process them. We gotta acknowledge them, or they're never going to go away. You can't fix what you don't know is broken. And, I see, especially with dementia and with elder care, just this massive blanket of shame. And, I'm starting to see it pull back and some eyes peeking through and some mouths speaking out, but we just need so much more of it. I mean, we're all getting older, no one's found the magic bullet for that, and we probably aren't going to see it in our lifetime. And yet, why are we surprised that we are aging? That our bodies are changing, that our minds are changing, that disease is taking place, that relationships are changing. Why don't we accept that?
Yeah, that's obviously one of those $1 million questions, right? And I guess what I'd add to what you're saying, Lori, is that, I think that, again, I'll just use a quote. Richard Leiter is a great mentor and friend of mine, and he always talks about this concept of the living dead, and what that really means is that we're going through the motions at such fast pace that we forget to step back and do what you're kind of saying is ask the whys of getting into more of the depth of our humanity, of who we are and what we believe and why we act the way we act. And I think that's I'm starting to see some things that shift, and especially with dementia and aging in totality, right? There's a big ageism. We like to use isms.
Yep.
And isms is, ageism is a big one because we reward youth. We don't reward senior or old or wise, especially if somebody has a little bit of cognitive impairment. Then immediately they're devalued and thrown kind of to the side. And that's a really, really sad situation. When you see it go well, when you see that embraced and brought back in, and in some cultures, as you know, in Africa and some other cultures, they're the ones that are revered, and aging is revered, and it's respected. And our society just has not caught that wave yet.
No, and it's really sad. I used to go into the schools and do a lot of age sensitivity stuff in junior high and high school, and it was so much fun. I'd get them for 2 hours, and they'd get two to four classes together, and we would play different age games, and I would have them describe what does an older person look like, and I'd be on the whiteboard, and it would be a whole wall, and we'd just list this whole thing. And, what do they look like? What do they smell like? What do they wear? Where do they go? What do they do? How do they feel? Everything was in there. And so then I'd have them look at it and say, now, do you think this is accurate? Oh, yeah. They all wear white tennis shoes, and they all go to bingo, and they all go to golf, and they all, bake cookies, and, they have that grandma smell, and they just kind of went on and on and on. And so I said, okay, now we're going to make a list of what do you think they think about you? Oh, we're too loud, and our hair's too long, and we drive too fast, and we swear too much, and they don't like our music. And so then I asked them, so do you think that that's an accurate depiction of who you are? And they all, of course, said no. And I said, then what makes you think your perception of them is accurate? And we get into this big conversation, and then play some other games, and it's interesting because all of this is full circle at all ages. Mm-hmm. And it's getting people to realize, I think, the power of one. And I speak about that a lot, and I'm sure you do as well, how one person can have such a big impact on so many people if they know it or not. Mm-hmm. You cannot not impact others around you. I mean, it's absolutely impossible. And yet you hear so many people go, it's none of your business. I'm handling that, stay out of my way. And it's like, but this makes me feel. But people don't want to be in touch with that. And it sounds to me like what Lifesprk is at its core, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is you're just this emotional generator that says we can have higher highs, and we can have better hopes, and we can dream bigger. And, if it's not perfect, that's okay, but let's try together.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the big thing you're making me think of a lot of things here. One thing I would say is that, you talked about mortality, right? Mm-hmm. And we're all mortal, right? We have to accept that. And we don't think that we're going to be able to fix all of these chronic conditions that folks have. Obviously, we're living a lot longer, and all these macro trends that are going on with comorbidities and chronic conditions, et cetera. At Lifesprk, we understand that that's just part of the game. That's part of life, right? Mm-hmm. But what we don't agree with is that your life experience has to go at the same trajectory as that frailty or that morbidity. Yep. And so, to your point, we can still have issues, and we can still improve our life experience, and still be joyful, and still be happy, and still be funny, and still be curious, and still be, silly. Mm-hmm. Right, and I think that's the mind bend that a lot of times people put everything in one basket, mm-hmm. and we don't. So what we usually see, and you're familiar with like Tuesdays with Maury and all those types of opportunities, and we all get old. It's just, what are we going to make of it, and how do we perceive it? And we've just denied the fact that we've denied the societal facts that when you get old, you might as well be dead, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the other thing that you made me think of it's kind of the eye of the storm study that you were doing with your children, which is great. I love that. How I see it is what I've learned, and I continue to try to grow myself every day. But when I see the eyes of an older person that has really got it, right? I mean, the one that you want to be around, your grandma and grandpas and things, not that they're always the nicest and best, but the ones that get it, that you want to be around, that mm-hmm. love you unconditionally. When you see their eyes, they're just sparkling, right? And then you take a child, you take little kids, and what do their eyes look like? They're sparkling, right? So for me, I see those eyes the same. I think when we start getting into we lose our curiosity. We stop asking whys as a small child, and we get into
or we're
teenagerhood.
told we can't.
Yeah,
It's probably more like it.
That's true. And then we kind of go into this we get into the rat race of just normal behavior. And this is where you go to school and you get a job and you get a house and you get a car and you do all these things, and you're kind of judging yourself based on these societal norms. But then when you get older, you start asking your questions again, right? You're saying, well, why? What is my purpose? Why do I matter? What's important to me? And the people that figure it out, they bring that spark back. That whole sense of self and awareness is really important. And their curiosity comes back. And then obviously all those whys are based on just what are you doing? You're trying to learn, right? A why question is, how do I learn? And so I love older, people that get it are the ones that are learning and are open. And to me, I see the eyes of children just like I do older people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe children are here to teach us lessons. I've got this book inside of me and got it almost done. I just got to come up with the money to do it. But it really is a story about who are we going to choose to be in the next moment, and it's about interaction with kids. It's kind of a kids. People go, is it a kids book and an adult book? And I'm like, adults will buy it for kids, thinking that they're going to teach them, but it will be the children teaching the adults, because their answers are going to be so different. Mm-hmm. And they're just so innocent and so simple. And, as adults, I think that's one of the most frustrating things for me with dementia and caregiving and life in general is, it doesn't have to be this complicated. Mm-hmm. Simplicity really is better on so many modes. It's more accessible. It's more relatable. It's easier to actually accomplish and assess. And so I'm really excited about doing that. It'll have, my concept will be kids will even be able to draw pictures and send them in, with their stuff, so it can be more interactive. And it's just kind of a fun little thing that came to me in a dream. And it's called Betty the Bald Chicken.
That's a good provocative name.
Well, and and I found rubber chickens and Mardi Gras beads with bald chickens on them, that I use when I go to speak and stuff. And everyone wants this book, and it's just, there's so many pieces that you do, but it's just a powerful little story that gets people thinking. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, what you're out there doing too, is you're getting people to think differently, to look at life differently, of what can be accomplished for somebody. Let me ask you another question here. If you can share some of your recent research regarding the impact of having purpose in our lives. I see it all the time with the people with dementia that I work with that have become advocates, or who actually just even walk into a memory cafe being dragged by their care partner. Right. And then can't wait to come back. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's this change, and it's almost, what I've seen, it's almost instant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as far as the data goes, and again, I always look at this in two pieces. There's the art of it, which are the stories that you talk about, and then there's the science, which is the data and the analytics and the research, et cetera. For Lifesprk, what we're always looking at is quality of life indicators. We're using different tools and different national benchmark tools to measure, so we know we're making progress, and we're affecting those quite a bit. As it relates to some of the other data that we're looking at around, like, for instance, rehospitalization rates of clients and ED utilization, which are, again, those deep dips when people get into that crisis mode. What we found is by using this holistic whole person model over time, over a 2-year period of time, we're able to reduce, for instance, hospitalizations by 73%, ED or emergency department or emergency room visits by about 52%. So that's some of the information that we're looking at. And then there's all the intuitive stuff that we've talked about the stories and the life experience. One that I would say is really important as far as the data is somebody like, we had this gentleman, Vern, who was a truck driver who just wanted to get back home. And again, he was also told that he wasn't going to be able to leave the nursing facility. We got him back home because all he wanted to really do was ride his lawnmower. And so that's all he wanted to do was ride the lawnmower. And he needed a lot of help. I mean, he was in a tough shape. And so we had to bring him home, and he had 24-hour care for a few weeks. But as soon as he started getting back into his own environment and his own spirit, he needed less and less care, and we got to decrease that until a point where he didn't need any care at all. And the life care manager, that coach, that person that's really the critical component of what Lifesprk does, was able to understand that. And sure enough, he got back out riding his lawnmower. And his brother, who was actually crying about that experience because he was so happy that he could see his brother in the environment that really he wished to be in. And actually, he stayed in his home for 5 additional years when even the physician had told him, "You are not going home." Mm-hmm. And so that is how we judge success as well, through some of those stories. When it relates to dementia, I know that you had talked about that when we were, and Karen, our person to talk to you about that, setting this up, was, there's studies out there, a lot of them right now, looking at purpose. And Rush Medical Center, for instance, has done a major study on purpose and cognitive impairment. And what they found, that they got 15,000 people, and they all those 15,000 agreed to donate the organs after they had passed. And through that period of time, until their death, they were evaluating their purpose and how they felt about their own purpose. And those that had rated themselves high with purpose were 52% more likely to not experience any dementia or cognitive impairment issues, which is pretty significant.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work that's being done, and there's a lot more data points on that. But the power of feeling engaged and empowered is as important as diet, is as important as exercise. And so we just need to come to grips with that because the data is there.
Yeah. And in some ways, I almost put that up higher than the others. And I know that the medical, community may totally argue that point. But, I've just, in my lifetime, seen such a variety of people, and those with purpose just seem to have less problems, or even if they have issues, they don't allow them to take over and stress them out. It's kind of amazing. There's a calmness that comes with, I think, just being centered. And I know that some people think, that's just woo talk,
Yeah.
She's going to talk about spiritual stuff, and she's, but, for myself, my friends joke that I'm the calm one,
Sure.
But and not all the time, but it's amazing when you feel purposeful at your core. And it's hard to define, I think, when that even happens, because, I think naturally we try to do what feels good, and so it just kind of occurs and reoccurs. And when you are at a soul level of purpose, it's just, some of these things are so little, people go like, how did you get there? And really, they're very little teeny steps that you've taken to give somebody else joy. And when they're joyful, then you get refilled. It's just, and I just find it sad that we don't truly practice this in schools. We don't talk about this, especially with the level of anxiety and drug use and all the other things that are going on. The kids, I personally would hate to be a child growing up in the environment we have, where you have to be worried about getting shot in school. That was something, we didn't have to worry about. And now that's very real. And you look at all of the trials and tribulations throughout life. If we could better prepare our youngsters, for what aging looks like, and for, if it's body shape, if it's gender, it doesn't make any difference, but just becoming more accepting as a society, as a whole, and really living with that true belief that anything is possible.
Yeah, and I think it starts, to bring it back full circle to this conversation, it starts with those seniors that are able to do that with the youth, right?
Yep.
There has to be, what's kind of interesting, we've sort of isolated our seniors in our society, right?
Yep.
We kind of house them, institutionalize them in different settings, and we've got them away from the children.
Yep.
And it's sad. And another mentor of mine is Dr. Peter Whitehouse, who's an expert in Alzheimer's, and he's a neuroscientist at the Cleveland Clinic. But anyway, he's actually, he's taken a new tact on life. He's working with his wife on intergenerational schools in Cleveland and doing charter schools around intergenerational work. And he also talks about things like non-biologic grandparenting, right? To bring in those seniors to share with those youngsters, some wisdom, some insight. And most importantly, again, why do we love our grandmas and grandmas? Because they love us unconditionally, and they're good, and they know, they're not about like the fancy car and all these material things. They're about you, and they get in the present moment with you, and they play, and they have fun, and yet they just know that the important things in life are purpose and are finding your goodness, finding your good place. And so, anyway, I just wanted to add to that a little bit because I'm very committed to helping our youth by having seniors engagement and helping our seniors with youth engagement.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I talk of a story about most of us have been in a room with a small child and to play. And there's no parents, there's nobody judging, and you're just in the moment. And you might be coloring or Play-Doh or paint or doing a puzzle. It doesn't make any difference what it is, or dress up. And then somebody walks in the door frame. They're not even in the room, but in an instant, you're being judged. You've done something you shouldn't have, because we bend the rules knowing that they're not as important as we were led to believe. And both the child and the adult instantly change. And there's this shaming inside that goes on. And you could almost feel the screaming of, oh, we're going to get it now. Even though nothing has been said.
Sure.
And yet they shared this precious moment that can never be taken away. And it's just, and we don't even know because a lot of times we can be that person in the doorway, and we don't even realize the aura we're walking in with and the message that we're giving, because we haven't said, I didn't say nothing. What do you mean? Come on, let's get going, pick up, Boop. Yep. And everything is changed. And the wisdom of our elders is, it needs to be honored. It needs to be glorified. It needs to be exposed in a dignified way. Same with, people with dementia. That's one of the things that I really try to do here is raise their voice, get people to respect it, get them eager to listen to the wisdom instead of, I always say, instead of peering in the window, knock on the door and ask a question.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's back to that, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right?
Yep.
And so lots of times, it's a role reversal, right? You think you're the teacher, and really you're the student, and you need to be. And if you just can knock down some of these judgments and these beliefs, that's when the magic happens. And this is a perfect time for me today, because again, I've been thinking a lot about my mother-in-law, back to that situation, and I'll tell you, I do get silly with her, and she's very advanced in her stages, and when I'm at my best, and I know it, and I know she knows it, and it's a different language that we have. It's not just the verbal, it's the body language, it's the touch, it's just the aura around. When I'm connected to her in a meaningful way, and I know my love's in the right place for her, I feel her so much stronger and better, and I have to check that, because it's so easy to get into that rote sort of position of, patient to a client to blah, blah, blah. And so I like what you're saying, and I think that's really important for us to realize that we really have to open ourselves up and be vulnerable to get the learning and the love out of these great people that are in front of us, that sometimes we just want to put a label on them.
Yeah, one of the things I say is I think that they are here to teach us to live to be playful again, because we unlearn how to be playful. I so get what you're talking about with your mom, because like I don't sing, and there's a reason, folks. I don't sing in front of people. I mean, I go to church and I mouth it, because I still remember my dad looking back on a road trip going, Dorothy, can you get her to shut up? I mean, it was painful. But my mom would get me singing because she didn't care anymore, and those lessons of unconditional love and there's levels of it. I didn't know there were so many levels of unconditional love. Until I went and experienced, my mom's disease with her, and it was amazing. It's like a religious experience. I mean, it's like out of body, because it's so joyful, so peaceful, and so safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty incredible stuff. Well, I can't believe we're flying up on our hour here already.
Wow.
I told you it'd go fast.
Yeah.
I want you to talk a little bit about, what's down the pike for you and in your company. Where do you see things in 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and where we see ourselves is in a place where this has become more recognized as a standard approach. To your point, a lot of these things are hocus pocus kind of magic. It's too, with the psychosocial stuff's too hard, or it's not valuable. And what we're doing is we understand that the art has to be with the science. So we have a lot of measurables and data that's supporting this work. And what that looks like in 5 years is that Lifesprk needs to be a spark, a catalyst for other companies and for other people on the model and on the perspective that these common sense, simple things absolutely are critical to the betterment of those that we're serving. And I'm sure we'll be looking at scaling and taking the company into different markets, but only if the model is right, and only if we're able to really influence the right people to start to make change. And what I mean by that is, again, back to that payer. I want, as dementia is a very tough on families and folks in many, many ways. And one of them is many times it's a long-term diagnosis, and it's very costly. And we need to create better ways to support and to help people that have no idea where to start. And I think that funding and that ability to do payment reform is a place that I think is really important. And what I want to see Lifesprk helping and pioneering into the 5-10 year space.
Yeah, I think too. It's the funding is really important, but I think so much is the mindset and the heart set. Until we get people to feel the need to change, we can throw statistics at them, we can be fear mongers, we can do all kinds of stuff, but until they feel kind of that tug on their heart that, wow, this really needs to change, and I can make a difference, in my own unique little way. If we don't start empowering people, it's not going to change. It's not going to be sustainable. And I've seen that just in the last 5 years. It's starting to shift. We have a long, long ways to go, and there's many voices coming out on that. But we need inspiring people to take it to another level and to really continue to talk about this and be advocates, for those, for all of us, really, because it is cross-generational, and no matter what age, we can impact, one another. In closing, I wanted to just talk with you a little bit about Lifesprk. And I saw a film. I have a friend over in Australia, and I cannot remember the company he is with, and I feel horrible. But they took a man who was 86 and went skydiving. I don't know if you ever saw that video. And they kind of had to fight with the family because the family didn't want him to go. But, he was in the Air Force, and, he was jumper, and he was thrilled to death, and they did a tandem jump. Does your company ever get involved in bigger things that cost funds or, a nonprofit side to offset some of those things? Or, is that incorporated in your model at all? Yeah,
it surely is. We actually have a thing called Lifesprk Wishes. Talks about the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And we always say, hey, it just isn't the kids being able to have fun, right? We want to have everybody. So we actually are doing these. We actually measure these and how many. We do, and each of our life care managers, a person that's the nurse or social worker that works with our clients. So we measure them, and what's fun is they are the big things like the skydiving. I can tell you things. We got a gentleman that used to be the Commodore out at the Wayzata Yacht Club, and his wife actually was our client because she had dementia, and he was her caregiver for 10 years and basically shut off his whole world.
Yep.
And we got to know him and his wife, and we cared for his wife. And we realized he was his Commodore and that he hadn't been sailing forever. And his son was a sailor, and his grandson was a sailor as well. And he had never been out on a boat with his grandson.
Oh.
So we worked with the Wayzata Yacht Club and others, and they got a boat, a 32-foot boat, and we got him out there, and we were just going to take him around for a little ride. He got in there, and he started sailing that boat himself, and doing the whole thing, and his wife was being careful. And it was fantastic. And so it was, we had probably 40 or 50 people that were people that he had trained on how to sail at the Wayzata Yacht Club, and they were just on fire. I mean, there was tears, there was laughter, there was emotion. And the spark and the energy in that room was unbelievable. And so from skydiving to sailing to we have had people flying electric planes. We've had people go actually on big trips across the country that they wanted to do, and so on and so on. So we do a lot of that with other partners. We think isolation is fatal. We do it with collaborating partners. Again, it could be, like I said, the State Theater threw some tickets in. We've had the Metrodome. We've had all sorts of crazy stuff. So we love that and a lot of it.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad I brought that up.
Yeah,
because I just
thanks.
think that's an important piece of what you have to offer. So to contact you, people can call 952-345-0919. That's 952-345-0919. Or you can go to lifesprk.com. And that's life, L-I-F-E, and then spark is SPRK.com. So no A. Lifesprk.com. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Joel. It's just been such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori, for giving us a chance to talk and to share some of the early sparks that we're doing at the company. And I look forward to working with you long into the future. So thank you.
Thank you. For those of you that are new to Alive and Social, you might want to check out Rachel Perrin, the culinary director for Kowalski's Market, along with her producer and sidekick, Adam Lee. They always talk about seasonal foods and favorite flavors and trending topics. Their show is called What's for Dinner Tonight, and their podcasts are only like 10 to 15 minutes long. But they give you great ideas if you're hungry and don't have a lot of time. You can also go to Kowalskis.com to find a full seasonal menu list. And Kowalskis is Kowalskis. That's Kowalskis.com. I also want to mention for new listeners and existing, all of our shows are archived. So we have years of shows archived. If you want to go back and listen, we just had somebody talking about horseplay and the powerful lessons of living and engaging through horse therapy. We also had a local author on who talked about the gifts wrapped in Alzheimer's, an attorney who turned travel companion, and then a gal who does caregiver cruises as well. So check those out. As far as our dementia chats, the last one we posted, we had a great decision about moving and construction and remodeling and the effects that these things have on people living with dementia. I think you'll find their insights that they share really openly and honestly, pretty amazing, and help you and your families or your businesses when it comes to construction. I also get asked all the time about upcoming film screenings of His Neighbor Phil, and I will be out at the Gables in Venice Heights, January 26th from 2 to 4, and you're more than welcome to come. I'll be in Schererville, Indiana on the 13th, and then I'll be out in Illinois on the 14th and 15th, and then back in Woodbury on March 6th and May 20th. So please reach out to me if you want some more details on that. Also on the blog, Carol Larkin, who is just a great woman and has been in the business for quite some time with Third Age Services, wrote a great blog called An Inspirational Man. And I think it's really poised prominently, especially in this time in our country. You know, we need inspiration to pull us together. Last, I just want to do a shout out again to the caregiver or the Call Alert Center, and you'll be directed from my site right to the Caregiver Alert page, where you can register your loved ones or your pets in case they would wander away. And don't forget about the Memory Cafe directory. Until next time, please keep in mind your memory chip, which is an easy tool you can access that gets us shifting from tasks to really focusing on, are they safe? Are they happy? Are they pain-free? Talk to you soon.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebesti here, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people could just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday, without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.